You're listening to the Unemployed Bartender Podcast with your host, Keith Carter.
They've already clicked off of the show.
You know, I haven't listened to many podcasts.
This is riveting for your listeners. You do realize this, right?
Yeah, I don't know. What else do you want to talk about?
Do you put little outtakes in the intro of your podcast?
All of this can be cut out because I'll pretty much just a podcast. New episodes every Friday. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the UB Podcast. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Unemployed Bartender Podcast. It's been a couple weeks, a little bit of holiday time, downtime for myself and my family, and happy to get back on the mic and speak to some interesting people that I've discovered along my way through this world. So in particular, I say discover because today's guest is somebody that I became aware of when I was upstate at a bookstore in Kingston, New York, and I happened to purchase a couple books from there. And in one of those books was this very mysterious photograph, very artistic and labeled with some mysterious numbers upon it. And for those watching on the video, I'll show it up here now. And this was placed here by Mr. Fred Cray. And he's here on the show with me. Mr. Fred Cray, I appreciate you for joining me on the Unemployed Bartender Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah. So, first of all, yeah, I did not expect to have a picture pop out. And when it did, I just kind of dismissed it at first as a bookmark placement that a bookstore might, be apt to do to advertise for their store or whatnot. But it was kind of laying on my coffee table for a couple days before I was like, "What? That's pretty cool. What is that?" Then we looked it up online, and it turned out it's one of over 26,000 pictures that you've left all across the world since 2008. And after I discovered that fact, I said, I have to get this guy on the show. So,
okay, yeah, I'm actually up to about 48,000 photos at this point. So
okay, so you've
keeps going. The project keeps going. So.
Yeah. 48,000 photos all over the world. Tell me, what is Unique Photographs? What led you to, get this started? Why did I find a picture in my book and you're now on my show?
Well, I started this quite a while ago. The best way to describe it was probably about 10 to 12 years ago. I started leaving the photos about 2008. And what precipitated that was I originally started out doing photography the old time way, where it took years to be able to make a decent photo. You learned how to develop film, you learned how to print, and it would take about 2 years before someone could make a decent photo. And now anyone can buy a cell phone camera, buy a printer, and do a better job in 2 hours than it would take 2 to 3 years of schooling.
Yeah.
But I was so entrenched in the physical making of the photographs that when I started switching over to digital, which are advantages to and disadvantages to, or not many disadvantages, but I still needed to see the photographs physically. I didn't, and to this day, I still need to do that. I can't register a photograph on a screen the same way I do with it physically. Mm-hmm. So what I would do is, instead of having contact sheets, which I don't know if you're aware of what contact sheets are.
Yeah, but tell us all.
When film was developed, you'd get negatives and you'd put them in sleeves that would organize them, and then you would put them under light and onto the paper, expose it, figure out the exposure, expose that sheet of paper, develop it, and you'd have usually 36 images on a approximately 8 by 10 sheet of paper. And the way I sort of learned photography, and the way all my peers did, was we'd go through and you'd keep going over these contact sheets, and you'd choose 2 or 3 images, maybe sometimes more, sometimes less, from a roll of film, which would be, again, 36 exposures, less if you're using larger format film. And then what would happen is you would select those 2 or 3 images, go into the darkroom, spend a couple hours, usually make test prints, and then make a better print if the test print seemed like it was worthy of pursuing further. And then eventually one might make final prints or exhibition prints or different types of prints. Switching over to digital, one just accumulates photos on your hard drive. And for me, it was hard to separate out which are the ones I like and why. And so what I would start doing is printing these 4x6 images that were equivalent to the images that I would select off the contact sheets. And again, I needed them physically to look at, so that I'd look at them in the morning, look at them at night, put them on the wall. And they would register differently than, just going to a computer when you want to and looking at a photo when you want to.
Yeah.
So I've always worked a lot as far as with photography. So when I was in school, the teachers were really, they were hard workers themselves, and they were sort of pushing the idea that art is just like anything else, whether it's athletics or music, that you have to practice it every day. And so to this day, I still do that pretty much. So I generate a lot of work. And so I started generating these 4x6 photos that some of them were really good, and some were just ones that I would look at for a while and throw out. And I just started getting piles of them. And I had been in high school, we had done a couple things where we had, with guerrilla-like fashion, put up photos, and we did a show called The Bathroom Show, where we went around to the bathrooms in the school and taped up photos on the walls. And I had heard about this show that occurred in Boston. It was called the Bus Show. And people had sort of, in guerrilla fashion, and this is probably back in the 60s, had put photos up in the buses and just left them there. So at some point, I decided I would start doing these small photos and leaving them for people. And I just I don't even know whether I left them or just gave them to people periodically. And I wanted to be accountable for what I was leaving, so that they were different, say, than when you go into bars and there's all those racks of advertising photos, or, the postcards for this and that,
yeah.
Which occasionally I do put photos in there, but I wanted there to be some sort of acknowledgement of who put this in there and what it was. And so what I decided, and I wanted as minimal information as possible. So I wanted people to know it's a unique, one-of-a-kind photo, which means that there's only one iteration of that photo. I may vary it, I may double print it, I may use it in different ways, but there's only one iteration of that particular photo. For a while, I was punching holes in the photographs in different spots, making puns on the fact that you could look at and look through a photograph. And I wanted my name on there just so, again, I was accountable for it. So I started leaving them out. Unique photograph, Fred Cray. And this was early, again, 2008, something like that. 2007, maybe I started leaving some around. And for about a year and a half, I left them without any numbers on them. And then I decided that I would start numbering them to reiterate the fact that they're unique photographs.
How many do you think you left without numbers?
2,000, maybe 2,500. But the other thing is, like the photograph you have, I don't know what the number is, but it's actually most likely 46,000. So when I got up to...
Yeah, I was going to ask you what the numbers might mean, because this is 2494, 2494.
Okay, so that's 2494. They're just consecutive numbers to reiterate that they're... So I number them as I go along. But I'm up to 48,000 now. So you got number 42. I got lazy when it came to 999. I went back to 0.
That's why I was wondering if I got a super early one or a super late one.
No, so there could be conceivably 4 different photos with the number you have at this point. And then I really got going on the project in 2008. I had a show up at the gallery in New York that represents me, Janet Borden, and it was in October. I forget when the show opened, whether it was late September or October, but the market crashed. That was when there was a big economic meltdown.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so what happened was literally the red dots that were on the wall for sold photos came off the wall. People backed out of the deal. There were a bunch of, I think some were Bear Stearns people, and there were a couple other people. And so all of a sudden I went from selling a number of photos to selling nothing for this show. And if you recall, I mean, people sort of went into shock when this economic collapse happened, and a lot of people lost jobs, and there was a change, an economic reset. And my feeling was, well, if I can't sell the photos, I'll just give them away. And so I started leaving more of these photos, and I leave them all over the place. I mean, I leave them I used to go into Century 21 a lot, which just closed recently.
So sad.
But
love that place.
Yeah, it's really, that was a great place. But I would go in and put them in the tuxedo pockets there, and inside, I'd put them in purses.
That's a good way to get it into, some people that have got a little connections there.
Well, possibly, but it's, part of it is, I don't know whether people are going to keep these or throw them away. Yeah. And it's just, showing that things are ephemeral. And one of my favorite places actually is to go into like photography stores or picture framing stores or IKEA. And they have those small frames with generic photos in them that you buy. They're 4 inches by 6 inches. And sometimes I just open up the frames and put my photos in and then leave them back there. I went into IKEA once, and they had about 30 photos there, 30 frames there. And I opened up every single frame. And so all of a sudden there was like a mini exhibition of 30 of my unique photos in these frames. And I just left them in.
Is it sort of like a cheeky juvenile fun that you get out of or mischievous type feeling when you do like those types of setups? Or is it, just looking for obvious but not obvious places to hide things? Like, what's kind of the motivation behind settings such as that?
I like to walk a lot and wander a lot in New York. I mean, and I go out with my camera and do that. And so generally I don't too often go out with the intent of trying to leave photos, but I always carry a pocket full of them, or if I have a bag, I'll have some in the bag. And so I try to leave them where I go. So I do go into bookstores a fair amount, but I wander on. And so a lot of times if I see stuff taped up on corner light poles, I'll take photos there, bulletin boards, laundromats. It's just wherever I go that I think I can leave them and not really offend or upset people.
Yeah.
It's changed a little bit during the COVID thing because people have different sentiments about touching things. So, and also small stores are really suffering right now. So I don't want to go in there and further create a hardship. And it's funny, even bookstores, I was working up on the Upper West Side, and Barnes and Noble, the one on Broadway up there, had this, which I thought was ridiculous, and I didn't particularly adhere to they had signs up saying, please don't touch anything you don't intend to buy. This is a bookstore.
Makes it a little difficult, yeah.
And bookstores, I mean, people go in and they browse. Right? And it's part of the, so I pretty much disregarded that, but I only went once and just was like, this isn't really, I'm not feeling that welcome to leave stuff there, so I won't push too hard there. But so sometimes it's the idea of having fun wherever I am. And I try not to deliberately upset people. So that, if it was a funny story. I've only had one person who seemed really upset about my leaving photos. It was a comic store. And I went in there and left I matched a lot of the photos. Sometimes I try to match the photos to the setting. So I had been photographing some comics. I went into a comic store and left some multi-printed images of comics inside comic books and, comic, both soft cover and hardcover. And I got an email from the owner of the store saying, "Hi, I just want to let you know I found your photographs that you left in here and I threw them all out. Please don't ever come in here again." And so I emailed back and I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. And I'm generally people are pleased, excited, or interested in finding the photographs. And some people even collect them, and people actually buy them in galleries. I said, they sell in galleries. And then he emailed back and said, "Well, why didn't you tell me they were worth some money?" But I had never heard of the guy, had heard from him, had never communicated with him before. And so it was a funny thing. And, that's another little issue with these unique photos is that, they sell sometimes at auctions, sometimes in galleries, and the same photos can be found for free. And I've had a couple collectors.
They're out there, 48,000 plus of them.
Well, I've got a couple thousand in my studio. They go into book projects, and But I do make sure that I put my favorites out there too. That I'm not just putting ones that I don't want out there, and I do throw a lot out before they get stamped. So not every one becomes a unique photo out in the world.
So obviously, at least two people, me and an aggrieved comic book store owner, have contacted you about these. But is this something that happens often? And on that note, does it feel somewhat validating, or is that part of the experience, being contacted and kind of getting a little bit of like, oh, that's where my photo is, closure for the art?
It is generally, and it's actually quite a wonderful thing that some people reach back out. I have people tell me that they framed them, they're on their wall, and they look at them every day. I've had people say it's the best thing it's the only. There's a guy who, I believe if I'm not mistaken, was working at the Strand at that point, and he said finding his photograph was the only good thing that happened to me in 3 months. And sometimes people used to really write a lot. I got a handwritten letter from a woman once who, she was a professor at NYU, and she told me a couple things that she said she had never told to anyone else. And she told me that she used to go around hiding things in the city as well. But she went on to talked about this affair that she had never told anyone else about. And, we have a sort of secret club here or something. But I would say more recently, which is by recently, I mean the last 3 or 4 years, I'll just get a quick snap of the photo and an Instagram direct message, so that that platform is mostly where I get contacted now. But then again, like I got an email from a woman in Barcelona. This was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and she's a teacher over there. And someone had written a book, which I still haven't seen, mostly because it's in Spanish, but it was about 12 New Yorkers who make a difference in New York. And so I was one of the people there, and it was printed it's a Spanish book. I don't believe it's ever been translated. And so she read this, and she asked me to send her some photographs so that she could leave some photographs around. And that's happened a few times. And generally what I do, if it's going to places I don't intend to go, or I won't be able to go. So generally what I do is I send 30 to 50 photos, a cross section from various projects. And I say, hey, keep your favorite 2 or 3 and leave the rest wherever you want, but try not to offend people. So there've been some people have gone to like Australia or South Africa and done this. I mean, I've been to Asia a number of times, so I've left quite a few there, but
it's being left in places in your honor across the world, even if you haven't quite made the stop there yourself.
Right. So other people have contributed to the project, and it wasn't like I didn't seek out people to contribute. Just people said, I really want to do this.
No, I think it's a natural. I mean, the first thing I thought when I saw it was like, wow, this is unique, cool idea. Which I want to leave stuff around. That sounds really fun. I mean, I think that's naturally that inquisitive, like, lost and found kind of childish thoughts that we have when we discover something that's unexpected. And That's what I went through. I think it's what a lot of people go through, which I think is probably why so many people have connected and feel a connection. I guarantee you there's thousands of people of the 48,000 photos have probably been inspired to do something at least a little bit similar, but probably more in tune to what their own passions are. But you probably inspired a lot of different types of things like that, which I think is a really cool thing. So yeah, the main thing I wanted to talk to you about was that project, but I also want to get to know you a little bit, because I like to get to know everybody that I bring on the show. And you're from Illinois.
I was born in Evanston, Illinois, but my parents moved east to Connecticut when I was in 6th grade, and so I've been on the East Coast since I went to high school in Connecticut and then college up in Vermont, and then in 1979 I came to New York, so I've been here since.
Did you move soon enough to have an opinion on whether or not Evanston is Chicago or just its own independent, unique thing that it's not Chicago at all, and don't call it being a part of Chicago?
I don't know. It's like many things. You can go either way or both ways, or switch it if you want.
Yeah.
So,
my she's 15. She lives with her mom and she lives with me. She's here with me now. She's with her mom in the summer. But anyway, they live in Lisle, Chicago land, right outside of Chicago. Every time I tell them, I was like, oh, my daughter, she lived in Chicago. And she's like, I don't live in Chicago.
Right.
We live in Lisle. I'm like, okay, whatever. Nobody cares.
Right. Or it's like some people want to live in the city and some people don't. So they make that distinction.
So you're an East Coast guy.
Correct.
So you went to the Yale School of Art.
I went to the Yale Summer School of Music and Art in Norfolk. Then I finished undergraduate at Middlebury. I took a year off, and I went to Yale Graduate School for painting, and just didn't like it, so I left. So I just felt it was.
That was the crux of my point. Was like, what's an Ivy League art school like? I have a hard time kind of wrapping my head around that getting the attention that it would need.
Well, Yale's always had a great reputation, and well deserved. When I went, there was a little bit of transition of the faculty members, and it just felt to me a little conservative. And what I went for was actually because I was thinking about teaching. And if you had a degree from Yale, you could pretty much get a teaching job. But when I was there, some of the the young teachers are just talking about how much they hated teaching. And I was like, I don't want to do something if I'm going to hate it. And so I just sort of got up and left. So I just felt like if they were hating it that much, why incur the debt? It wasn't anything like debt people incur now, but why incur the debt and then have to take a job to pay it off? So I came to New York permanently at the end of 1980.
Have you been able to say photography and art has been your job? Like, have you been lucky enough, I should say, I guess, in the art world to be able to do this for a living?
No, I mean, like so many people, I do odd jobs, and I still, to this day, I mean, this year I worked probably about 20 to 25 days. I sort of migrated into decorative plaster and painting, and So Venetian plastering. So I picked up a few days here and there. I have this small house I bought years and years ago for very, very little, and I didn't even want to live in this neighborhood at that point. I mean, it was a great neighborhood in a way. It was a very quiet neighborhood, but it was very remote. When I first moved here, the kids used to play stickball on the street all weekend. There's no car traffic, but no, I've always I mean, there've been a couple of years where I sold a bunch of artwork, or I got a significant grant that helped out. But I think most people, have to sort of cobble it together, whether they teach or do something else. And some people, there's a woman who has a significant trust fund, and she once said, "I don't understand how you can make art without a trust fund." And I said, "Well, no one ever trusted me." So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, it's, I'm sure anyone that's made art for a living, as you do, as I have for a long time, just different types of art, but it gets, it seems like it would be a hell of a lot easier on a trust fund to just like, I think almost half my ideas are like, boy, if I could just have just a little bit of extra time where I really didn't have to worry about rent and all these other things, I could really hash this thing out, which I think has been kind of, as I've said on the show a lot, it's just kind of the blessing that's hidden in the curse of Corona, is that it's forced a lot of people to kind of take a little bit of time to just self-reflect on even what the hell they're doing in this world, which is going to,
right,
spin off a bunch of different types of creative outlets. And some of them are going to be, public facing art realms. And just like the last crisis that we have, I think it's going to spur a lot of new creative movements. I very much look forward to just experiencing what life is going to be like as we start to kind of rebuild it from whatever the hell this is that we're living in right now. But
right. It's been really it's been a horrible time for a lot of people, particularly certain industries, and I'm not going to list certain industries because I'll leave others out. But I mean, we walk around New York City and you see all the boarded up storefronts and the closed restaurants, and
this isn't called the unemployed bartender for nothing. So.
Correct. And it's really heartbreaking to see this much of New York sort of shut down. And but I mean, I've been lucky enough that over the last 20 years I haven't had to work that much. I mean, I work 20 to 80 days a year. I try to live cheaply, and but when I first came to New York, I was doing construction jobs like crazy, working 70, 80 hours a week on construction jobs, and then I'd go home and work at night, and I'd be able to work till whatever in my studio till 1 or 2, and then get up early the next morning and go back at it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people did that, but then you do. If you want to stay in New York, you figure out how to make it work in terms of getting a little more time for yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's a decision. A lot of people will come here. I mean, I came here amidst warnings of how difficult it is, and this was before there was a worldwide global pandemic, and it's not easy. But New York's the kind of city that if you're supposed to be here, it just gets in your blood, and it almost gives you its own. It gives you the energy you need if you let it to fulfill those things.
Correct.
For me, it is. I feel like as soon as I got here, it gives me the energy to create and get by no matter what.
Right. There is so much here. It's just mind boggling. And if you go to other places, either you appreciate the other places or you miss New York and you say, New York's really got all this great stuff. And it does. And I think one of the things with the pandemic, and I have no factual basis for saying this, is that there's probably going to be an economic reset. And, where rents drop and storefront rents drop. And so maybe people who wanted to come to New York before who couldn't afford to will be able to come here. Maybe people who wanted to open businesses will be able to. And again, I don't know for sure. That's just the way one possibility seems. But It seems like landlords are going to have to make concessions that allow people to come back and, but
you would think that
again, we'll see what happens.
It needs to happen, and it's needed to happen. And that's one of those things that's really difficult to like think about or talk about in terms of just even as well as New York City was humming along a year ago, even though it wasn't. The underbelly was very discontent, but the city as a whole seemed to be humming along quite smoothly with high rents and high everything and whatever. But in reality, when like 20 bars go out of business every month and get replaced by new bars, you're just cycling through something that's never actually going to get any better. And we needed this reset. We need cheaper rent. I mean, some of the bars that I worked at and played, like their rents are like $20,000 and there's no traffic. There's
Right.
there's no nothing. I'm like, I'm from Arkansas where like this building would like maybe like $4,000 for like a crazy expensive, huge place in the type of traffic space that this place is in, that's got a $20,000 rent. That's going to be literally, I can't even possibly imagine how they're going to scrape by. And that's just what the going rent is. And if you want to put a place in, that's what you got to do. And you have these people that are throwing their whole dreams at it. They're like, well, if the rent's that high, the money's got to be there. And it's
Right.
just never stops. So
we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's one of the things. I mean, I have talked with a conversation that has come up with friends over the last 5 years is sort of missing the sense that young creative types can just come to New York and make it work easily, and it's just not possible. And it's more tech and business people that make decent money who come here as young people. So there's less culture.
Although I did find, I bought a couch when I first moved here. I bought a couch from some guy somewhere in Brooklyn. I don't remember, but it was this enormous, like 20-room artist loft thing with like every room was a different thing. It was like a jungle garden inside, and there was like a whole area but they were all just obviously just artists lofting up together to, live cheaply and live the New York dream of being artists in New York living cheaply. And they did it,
Right.
which gives me a lot of hope that it can still exist, because I'm also pretty sure that I'm going to talk about in our neighborhood, that big building that looks like it's vacant and empty, but there's like on the side of it, there's a double decker
lights that you can see.
Yeah. And looks like people are living up there, and it's huge building. And I feel like that's got to be one. And I want to,
Right.
I want to know how much it is and how I get it and where I can get in there. But I see places like that, and all I see is inspiration for me. I was like, oh, that's another generation, or it's, I don't know. It's something that I wanted. I'm probably getting too old to live myself, having kids that depend on me and I have to support, and they would probably frown upon living in an artist shared loft. But do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, sometimes I do know that. And then next to it, there's some buildings that have been boarded up that have been just abandoned for 10 years at least. And the ground floor of the building you're talking about, I think that used to be like a 99-cent store, and it's been shut up for a long time.
Yeah.
Is that the building you're talking about?
Yep.
And that used to be a great little store, but they wanted more rent, and it's been at least 15 years since that's had a business in there. So I have these fantasies about, in our neighborhood and all over the city, they're still doing. One of the things that seems to be driving New York right now, as far as people being out and going to work and jobs that you see happening, there's a lot of construction still going on. They're finishing these buildings, and I wonder who's going to be moving into them, and I fantasize.
Exactly the thought I have. It's like every time I go out, I'm like, who is this for? There's thousands of empty.
And then I think, well, maybe they'll just have to like drop the rent low enough that all of a sudden some of these become just like artist housing and stuff like that. I mean, we don't know. And again, you don't know what the economic positioning of the people who own these buildings. And, literally like 2 lots away from where I am, they started breaking ground 2 or 3 days ago. And I'm like, wow, this is just a lot. And I was like, I wouldn't be building something right in this economic condition right now, but obviously they think it's going to get better or something.
No, the building I told you I lived on 20th before. The building I moved out of, there's 10 apartments in that building. And me and 3 other apartments moved out all in the same weekend time. So 60% occupancy. And then they broke ground on an apartment building next door that's been just a pit for a while. But then they decided that now is the time to go ahead and get it on up, I guess. I don't know. But I have direct knowledge that the building right next door to it is highly unlived in. So who knows? All I hope for is, like you said, a reset. But it's the impossible thing about 2020, coronavirus, all of this stuff is for every reset of anything requires someone else to lose something. Some stuff has to come from somewhere else. So it has to be taken from other people in some way, shape, or form, as it has been taken from a lot of common people for hundreds of years in America and thousands of years across the history of our world. But, for rents to come down and, there's a whomever that owns the building is lose money, which leads to the bank not getting their mortgage, which means they lose money, which then leads out to investors that invested in the bank. And then now that's threatening deposits. And there's no fix on any one actionable level. It's going to take something bigger, maybe like a government, some sort of
government debt,
some sort of centralized leadership group that could come together to represent the people's needs. If we could to figure something like that out, then maybe we could just get through this thing.
Well, we'll get through it. So.
We're all going to get through it one way or the other.
Right. Yeah, hopefully on the safer side rather than, with
I
more
hope so
damage.
too.
But
it's
been hard on everyone. So.
It's really hard, and it's really hard as someone that's tracked as kind of a data nerd. I've tracked every single day of this coronavirus, and it's caused me to kind of detach a little bit from the numbers occasionally. Although yesterday, over 3,000 people died, which equates to more than. We're at the point now where we literally are almost about to average more than a 9/11 a day of deaths, with passing mentions of oh yeah, that coronavirus thing. And it's to the point where it's almost hard to sit and listen to these people talk and not just I don't know if I'm alone here and that I'm having just angry, I have to do something. What can I do? I don't know what to do. Kind of moments every single day. And I don't. What's it like in your world? That's what I'm feeling. How are you dealing with all this shit?
I feel I get distracted by the news much more than is productive, because sometimes I'm looking at the news and I'll say, I can't really believe this is true. There's got to be a better source or something, and so I go to a different source and it's all the same. I do, and there is sometimes a sense of underlying anger. In New York, I feel walking around, there's just a huge sense of loss of. It's like walking around and seeing this big wounded animal that's just struggling to survive. And I don't normally I love walking around New York, but I just don't want to walk around a lot and see all these boarded up buildings and boarded up storefronts, and also. I just get tired of seeing people in the masks, I get tired of not seeing people's faces. But at the same time, I think, I'm hoping that the vaccine allows us to interact safely with each other again sooner rather than later. And obviously, there's a whole division and there's anti-vaxxers, and it's going to take a while to roll this out. And they don't know everything about the vaccine anyway. Yeah. They don't know how long it's going to remain effective. Are we going to have to do this every year? In which case, less and less people are going to do it. Then we have the whole, the thing that's really made me angry, I guess, is the lack of an agreed upon truth of what's going on, what's happened, particularly in this country. And I think that's really undermined a lot. And I think that's going to take a while to straighten itself out, that if we can come back to something that's an agreed upon truth for 99% of the people in this country. But that said, I mean, I've been trying to work daily. At the same time, feeling like I don't want to see the same art that I saw pre-pandemic. I need to see some sort of acknowledgement that we've all been changed by this, which we have been. And I don't know what the exact answer is of what it means to have been changed by this. But we've all, this is a year none of us are going to forget. We've all been really affected by this.
It's impossible. We've all changed tremendously. And I like that you brought up the, like, kind of a representation of what we've all gone through, because I definitely feel that. But I also have this, there's a dichotomous sense in that. Like, I don't want to hear your thoughts on it in real time. Like TV shows where they're incorporating the pandemic into their false reality, I'm having a little trouble with. It just doesn't sit quite right.
Right.
And things like that. And it's interesting because I recognize it. I'm not like mad or anything like that. I'm just like, oh, I don't necessarily know how I feel about this. And this is a show that I normally just love and just escape to. At the same time, if I was to watch something where like they haven't even acknowledged that we're going through a worldwide pandemic, obviously we all watched old movies and we're like, they're not wearing masks. You can't go in there. What are you doing? We have these mini freakouts about every 2 days and we're watching stuff. But
I was talking to a friend, and he wrote. There are two things I wanted to mention. One was, I mean, from basically when we first started wearing masks, I was I just didn't want to photograph people in masks, and I did go to some protests and photograph people in masks, but that's more a group. But I just, I just knew that I didn't want to depict our time with people in masks. And there are some people who've done some great portraits of people in masks, but it's not really my thing. But then I was talking to a friend, and he was talking about the plague that was way back in the 1900s that went on for 2 years, and he was talking about there was never really like any great art about that plague, and that killed more people than our current. Yeah. My understanding is anyway that it killed more people than the current COVID crisis, but there weren't great novels about it. There wasn't. There weren't great movies ever made about it that people wanted to see. And I think it's, if anything, that you assimilate it and you make it some sort of metaphor about it is the only way that, people aren't going to want to get over this and then see more pictures of people in masks.
No, we're going to hate masks. Like I predict a terrible season for the mask industry for Halloween next year if we're not in a pandemic. Just don't buy any mask stocks right after the pandemic's over. It's just not gonna be good. Right. Because honestly, I hate masks, and I'm a mask wearer. I wear it every single time I go out. I follow all protocols, and I have since the beginning. When I had COVID back in March, when this whole thing was shutting down, and there was a brief week and a half period where I didn't wear a mask at all and went places because I was like, oh, I've had it and I'm good, when we weren't sure if you had immunity or whatever. Right. And then back to mask and been masking ever since. But I hate it. I hate them. I can't stand them. And I don't do the same things that I used to do. I do not go to stores. I don't like going shopping. I don't like going anywhere because I have to wear a mask. And I know that I have to wear a mask, but I also wear glasses and I have long hair. And to go into a place is to change everything. Like I have to completely reevaluate everything about my face and my head and my body when I walk into a place and when I walk out of a place, especially in the wintertime. And it's just, I don't want to fuck with it. And so I don't go a lot of places. But that's that's fine.
Right.
But you have to, I think the disconnect is a lot of people are like, I don't like wearing masks and I'm still going to go do all the same shit. And those two things can't be the same. You can't have both of those same feelings. But unintentionally, we have talked for a reasonable amount of time. So I want to talk to you about your new book. And then we're going to do what I like to call the closing time lightning round, in which I ask you a series of questions that are guaranteed to have people approaching you on the streets because of how controversial your responses are.
Okay.
Except they're not at all. That's,
right.
which is the joke. All right. So the one thing I did want to touch on before we got out of here was you had emailed my producer about a project that you're working on currently that's going to be released soon, and it really caught. I didn't get a chance to look through the whole thing, but what I did look at really piqued my interest. Something to do with fingerprints and a new book. Want to tell me all about it, please?
Sure. It's actually, I have two different series of works going, but they do overlap, and some of the work bounces back and forth between the two. And the main project that I started working on early in the pandemic was taking fingerprints and putting them on photographs. And
now, are these your fingerprints or are these other people's fingerprints?
These are all my fingerprints.
Okay.
And I had years ago, I had worked with fingerprints both in terms of printmaking, and then I was doing some self-portraits where 10 years after that, where I put fingerprints on the wall behind me as sort of a dot pattern. So it's one of these things that I come back to periodically. And so I started, and it may have even been accidental, where I had some ink or something, some paint on my hands and touched a photo. And sometimes I have things like that, and I'll leave them up on my wall for literally years, and all of a sudden they'll resonate about, this is really cool. This is what, I want to do something with that. But so anyway, I got into this series and again, it's starting to work with the smaller 4x6-inch photographs, most of which are my own. Some are archived, like from New York's the main library, the picture collection. Occasionally I'll download images and I'll try to alter them. And I started putting fingerprints on, and sometimes they offset against the images. Sometimes they were stamping my own just identity onto this. And there were a couple ideas that were predominant. One was I was coming to realize that we weren't touching each other anymore during the pandemic. We were just told to not touch each other, and then except for people in your household, basically. And it started out with the elbow bumps and stuff. I remember,
yeah,
right before we shut down, people are still elbow bumping, and when I work on projects that generally carry on for a long time. By a long time, I mean 6 months or more. I've been working. I've been doing these self-portraits for 30 years. Actually, I periodically come back and photograph myself. But so sometimes there's only one fingerprint on a photo. Sometimes it almost obliterates the image. And it was also the idea that the fingerprints, Fauci says, wash your hands. Fingerprints carry viruses. There was also a funny thing about, you're told as a kid, don't touch the art, don't touch it, and you're never supposed to touch a photograph. And so not only am I touching it, I'm leaving proof that I touched it.
Yeah.
And it was the idea also of trying to connect via you're touching something, and finally, in this era of more and more, I don't know the exact word, but surveillance and identity, where your fingerprints, I'm leaving proof of who I am, yeah, and I'm leaving a concrete document of my fingerprint for that's out there. So that series, that's still going on. That will be. I've started laying out a book for that. That's about 180 images, some of which will be full page, and then others are gridded. And I want to. It'll be the first project where I get a book designer involved and let someone else throw some ideas on there, rather than the other books that I've done where I pretty much start to finish designed it and send it off to the printer. And most of these books a lot of photo books are small runs of, literally people do runs of 10 copies to a couple hundred. And most of my books are, a couple hundred copies that are they're printed by this company out in Oakland called Edition One that does a great job. This one I'm going to probably have printed. This one, hopefully, I'll get a designer and send off to a photo book publisher and let them deal with it. So anyway, I've started laying that out. It's pretty much edited, but I'll continue working on that. But it's not designed, and I want to talk to some people and then do a rough design and then get it to a designer. But I decided there's a concurrent series I've been working on for a while of making these very black photos, very dark photos. And to me, it started really coming together during the pandemic because thinking these are really dark times. And I started using some images. I didn't want too many to be recognizable images of public figures around, politicians, et cetera, around this. But so there is some street photography. There's, images of looting. And those are literally run through my printer 5 or 6 times. And they're very reflective, actually, so that when you look at those photos from the side, there's a sheen. The image you have is sort of right in the middle between, if I did one more run on it, it would probably become one of these dark photos. But you have actually in that image, it's one of my favorite artists. His name's David Hammonds, and I decided not to obliterate his image. But
that's probably so the art gods appreciate that, I'm sure.
Right. So this other series of very black photos, I intended that it would initially just be a suite of 8 to 12 images, possibly of larger prints. By that I mean 30 by 40 inch. So do 8 to 12 of those, and then a smaller suite of maybe 20 that were on 17 by 22 paper. So they're smaller images. But one of the things that happens is, so I end up on this very dark series of work, and it's physically very dark, that I end up making, in the series, maybe I've made 2,000 photos. And so some of those become the photos that I leave around, that I stamp and leave around. But then I thought, well, I really should do a book on this. So I was taking a break from this other book of 180 images and decided that I would do this smaller book of 23 or so of these other really dark images. And it's been a really tricky book to lay out because it's actually harder in certain ways to edit down to 23 images and have them bounce around page to page and make sense. And then also there's the visual redundancy that you don't want every image to be purely dark, and yet there's some recognition. So I've been playing around with that. Hopefully I'll finish that up in the next couple of days. I've been saying that since last week, and I keep making substitutions, but it's getting closer. And
well, this podcast won't release for 2 more days, so you have time. I could be like, it's releasing now, and
whatever time it takes,
we can tease it all up for you.
Whatever time it takes, I'm just going to give it. So, but it's coming close. So.
That's all the time it should take, is however long it takes. So, that's what art is.
So
it's done when it's done.
I've had these 2 projects, and they're both coming to some sort of fruition. I hope to say they're coming to a close, but sometimes I jump back into things like 6 months later. And one of the things I kept thinking, and I may be wrong, but I'm starting to feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel for the pandemic because of the vaccine. And again, we don't know how long until we can safely be around each other. So maybe trying to wrap these projects up somehow is concurrent with, this feeling that there's starting to be some hope on some of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really unique, and as soon as I heard about it, I was like, I want a book, if at all possible, if I could be one of the couple hundred people that get a print.
Sure.
I'll pay whatever I gotta pay. I just want to. I want one. I obviously I feel a special connection to your work because I discovered it, as I'm sure the other thousands of people. That's just how art works. And that's what I love about your approach. It's because you created this unbreakable, unknowable bond that I didn't ask for, but I love that I have, because it's this, this is a thing that was created that I have now, and we'd never met until now.
Right.
And we still haven't personally met, which I think we will at some point, because you're just right down the street, as we discovered before we started recording. You live a couple blocks away.
I had one little one-off that I wanted to mention, because I mentioned to a good friend of mine your podcast and that I would be doing this, and he started sending me jokes about, a horse walks into a bar, a skeleton walks into a bar, and so I decided, I've been trying to think of an absurd title for this book about these 23 very dark photos. And he sent me these skeleton walks in the bar, and I was like, so I have a tentative title for this book, which is Kill the Damn Skeletons, which is thanks to you.
Right. I love it. I'm glad that I could be of service in any way, because I do like your, when I found this picture from you was in kind of the infancy stages of still a small toddler podcast that I have here, but it also helped me kind of focus on what I wanted to do with this show, which is meet, discover, discuss, conversate with people as I would at my bar that have come from different backgrounds, that do unique, fun, different things. And then this allows me, I have a platform now where I can introduce people to these quirky, unique things that exist in our world, that now they can have a little bit of peace, because it really, it inspired me in a way that I'm already an artist that does a lot of different types of artistic things, but I also enjoy being reminded that there's other ways in which we can do art. And that was such a fun and inspiring reminder that art exists in a multitude of ways.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways that I could just be and still exist and do what I want. So I appreciate that. But I'm going to circle back to a couple clips that I had about your fingerprint thing. But the thing that really touched me the most is, I like to think about life as we interact and move about the world, is that we're leaving our fingerprint on every single person that we've touched. And we all leave a little piece of ourselves on everything that we touch. And that is that fingerprint that does exist on everything that we touch, whether we know it or not. So I found that to be, just personally, I personally zeroed in on that. And it was a beautiful metaphor for myself of just like that kind of I don't know, it's just not thought about.
Right.
Just the different ways in which we can impact and affect and leave a fingerprint on each other. And
hopefully a good one.
Yeah, hopefully a good one, but
a kind one.
Not every fingerprint left behind is a good fingerprint left behind. Which brings me to my second point, is that this is all elaborate scheme so you can commit crimes across the country, and that your fingerprints are just everywhere. But probably not that one. It's probably that you just had, the art thing. All right. Well, I really appreciate you joining me on the show, and we're going to jump in. Nora, I do the thing where I just gratuitously praise you and just tell you how wonderful you are after this, but I just wanted to get that out there. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy the conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's been great to talk with you. So
I look forward to staying connected, because I think that we can, and it won't be that hard. You're not that far away. So I want to jump right into this lightning round, because we're over an hour and 5 minutes now, and I still have to do. Well, I have a guest bartender that comes in at the end of every episode and makes a cocktail for us, and everyone gets to drink whatever crazy new cocktail that my guest comes up with on the next segment. So I got to get to them here pretty quick. So we're going to do this lightning round, and we're going to do it lightning fast.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. City or country?
City, definitely.
Car or subway?
How about foot? Walking.
That's a great one. I'm glad that we said that, because it brought me up to a thought that I had earlier. See, I'm the one that never makes the lightning round go fast. This is why I call it the lightning round. I stop everyone. But one of the beauties of all of this craziness is there's a lot less traffic everywhere. So it's encouraged me to get out and explore. And I recently procured a electric scooter so I can zip about at an efficient pace. And there's just there's a lot of city out there, man, that people don't have any
Great
clue.
place.
There's so much stuff. Every time I go out, it's just like, wow, I had no idea this thing was here. This is like 2 blocks from my house. I don't know. New York is a city that deserves and demands to be walked, and anything short of that is a travesty. All right. Do you have a go-to cocktail?
Coffee.
Black and white or color?
Color.
These are questions from my producer, and I have no reference, so it's just
Color. I'll go color.
What is the first thing that you're going to do? And this is a hard question because what's the first thing you're going to do post-pandemic? But it's such a... If you could just... What's the thing? I'm going to rephrase this in a way that's going to make it like simple. What's the thing you're most excited about to do when everything is normal?
Informal interaction with other people. Like if a neighbor says, you want to come in and have a drink, that sort of stuff, just.
That's crazy to think about going into your neighbor's home for anything.
Right. So just informal interaction. It's really.
I love it. I'm looking forward to it as well. And digital or film, but you already answered this. I know if I was to answer this for you, I would say that you appreciate what film is, but digital offers more abilities to create art.
Right. And if I can throw in one comment, I really appreciate that we're not wasting as many natural resources with digital. We're not pouring chemicals down a drain. That's one thing I really appreciate. So
that's a huge part. As we haven't discussed before, but I owned a screen print company for a long time and a clothing brand. That's the thing, the big lament I have about screen printing is it's extremely just terrible chemicals.
Right.
So plastisol inks and all the things used to clean it are just horrific for the environment. But it's also one of the the best, most pure way to create T-shirt art and poster art. So it's yeah, but I definitely, if there was a way, like if DTG printing, direct to garment printing was as beautiful, like if it was like going from film to digital where it got better, it would be beautiful, but it's not. It's a substandard printing technique. So yeah, I don't know. This whole segment was just sponsored by me shitting on direct to garment printers, I guess. Screen printing for life. And what's your typical bodega purchase? And do you have a go-to? Do you have a go-to bodega? For me, and speaking in ways that are purely informational enough, but code so that people don't know where the hell we live. But like there's 19 and 23rd for me, and I always go to 19th for most things, and then the other one's got a lot of other stuff. But like, do you have a go-to item, and then you gotta like you walk in and they're like, Fred, what's up, man?
I don't anymore have a go-to item. I do have a go-to bodega, and then there are a lot of supermarkets that I've gone to that aren't, they aren't bodegas. So it's less and less in the bodega.
It's I only bring it up because it's such a culture here in terms of like your local bodega, and not only the multitude of items that they could provide for you if you requested, but just the sense of community that I get when I go to and I'm only obviously probably keying in on this because it's our only community interaction point that we have right now. So I'm like, what's my bodega like? But that's unfortunately like the height of my social interaction as
my bodega guy.
Where you been, bro?
My bodega guy is always like, how are you tomorrow? So that's his question.
I'll let you know when I get there.
Right.
All right. Well, we've officially reached the point of the show in which I like to declare that we have successfully completed the first half of a podcast. And that's how I close every
Right.
first half of my show. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me in these wild and crazy times and, sharing with us kind of a little bit of the behind the scenes of what would be inherently a very kind of secretive art project because
Well,
uh,
thanks for having me, and I'm sure we'll run into each other in the neighborhood soon. So
I think we will. Like I said, we do have a guest bartender joining us in the next segment. Make sure you stick around to the other side. I want to thank Mr. Cray again for joining us. If people want to check out your books, the journey of some of your photographs, what would be some of the ways that people could interact with you?
I have a website, which is fredcray.com. My books are generally available. There's a photo bookstore called Dashwood Books on Bond Street, which is a great place in New York. It's literally just photography books. They have most of my books, and also I tend to post mostly on Instagram, which is Fred Cray Unique Photographs, and that's more informal thing. Sometimes I photograph the photographs I've left and in places and stores and stuff like that. So
Okay, so at Fred Cray Unique Photographs.
It's Fred Cray Unique Photographs, I think.
Okay. All right. So yeah, make sure you check him out or at fredcray.com. One more time, thank you so much for joining us. I will see you guys on the other side, and I'll talk to you later. Welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you joining me all the way from Paris, France, I'm assuming, not Paris, Arkansas. I'm from Arkansas.
Okay.
We have a Paris there, but I'm guessing it's not the same one.
Well, actually, whenever I'm ordering stuff online, I always have that issue of the both of them. But yes, I'm based in Paris right now, France. But I'm from the island of Trinidad and Tobago, where the home of Angostura is located.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, like I said, I really appreciate you joining me. And for doing it a little later, probably for you, this is as early a morning as I've ever done this show, so I'm still drinking my coffee and wiping eye boogers out of the eyes.
Oh man, so, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the accommodation.
Yeah, I really wanted you on this show. Yeah,
thank you.
The main guest on the show. So if you're not familiar, for those at home that are listening for this the first time, every episode we have a main guest, and they have a guest bartender that joins me, and that's what Daniyel's doing, who shares us with a wonderful cocktail of their creation. At the end of the show, he's gonna walk us through that cocktail and show us how to make the best Angostura-based cocktail in the world. So really excited about that. In the meantime, let's get to know you a little bit more, bub. So you're from Trinidad and Tobago. You're in Paris now. How do we get from there to there?
Oh man, it's it's a continued journey that I give thanks for, and I'm always grateful for the milestones of where I am today. I'm a Caribbean bartender. I'm from the islands. I'm the guy that people think only makes pina coladas and rum punches. I've been the global brand ambassador for the House of Angostura since 2013, when I won the Angostura Global Cocktail Challenge and was given an ambassadorship for 1 year. But I think the team, they love me and they appreciate the work that I put in. So I've been with them since then. So I've had the opportunity to travel to over a mix of 75 countries and cities globally. And my wife, she's French. So this is one of the reasons why I'm in Paris. But in addition to that, it's really for the fact that it's kind of center. So it allows me to work a lot easier than just from Trinidad. So I can travel to Europe, I can travel to the US. It's kind of a nice hub to really work with.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we all really want to know what this cocktail was that you made that earned you a job for 7 years. We all want to make a cocktail that gets...
Oh man, I wish it was so easy.
I personally specifically want to know.
Oh man, I wish it was just one cocktail to create, but I think that was the entry. It was an opportunity, and sometimes people can have their opinions on things when they have an experience. I competed in so many competitions, and I was always near to winning, to having that first place. And this was actually the first competition after so many that I was able to. I remember one person saying, "Why do you compete in so many competitions?" And I always felt like the competitions took me out of the bar. It allowed me to push myself beyond because, I'm no longer in the comfort zone. I have to now make sure that I'm updated with trends of mixology. I have to make sure that I have the equipment to facilitate that. So this is what I always did.
And you have to really understand why certain things pair well and why they mix and in what proportions and things like that. And to have that just broad knowledge allows you to be a tremendously better bartender.
Exactly, man.
And to think on your feet.
Exactly. Proportions are so key. I mean, you can have the right recipe, and the only thing that you need to do is just change the proportions.
Just
a
little bit.
That's it. So yes, it wasn't just one cocktail, but I think it was really, every opportunity kind of evolving from just being a bartender to a brand ambassador. And I think that has really been the pivoting point that has continued to create different motions that lead to where I am today. So from one drink, I remember going to my first Tales of the Cocktails and just being so excited to see all these people that have been mentors for me, and going to bar shows and listening to so many of them, and to now be in the position where I can share my knowledge also with and be in that place where I'm the one sharing. It's really an honor for me to do this. So I think every moment, every opportunity, I really I try to make sure I capitalize on it. And I also, one of the key things is every person that I meet is like a bartender. Because for me, a brand ambassador is a bartender. The bartender is the unofficial brand ambassador. So every person I get to meet you, I get to chat with you, and for me, this is an honor. I get to share a drink with you. This is the opportunity that I have, and I want to make sure I capitalize and enjoy the moment.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I feel the same way, which is why I started the show, which coincidentally allows me to talk to both very interesting people outside of the industry and requires me to have at least one interesting person from inside as well. So I designed it this way so that it keeps me balanced. And for me, there's so many different kinds of bartending, so many different ways in which to interpret the art and the craft that it is, which is why I like to have a ton of different types of bartenders on. For me, although I've always been, for a long time, I was a dive bar bartender. And then for the last 6 or so years, I've been to craft bar, working in mixology. I've done some molecular mixology work here in New York. But for me, it's always been about the customer and the interaction, the camaraderie that you get from regulars and your coworkers and things, just that environment.
Yes.
And that's what this show is about. It's that part of bartending that has nothing to do with the drink for me. It's that fellowship that we all share. And but I like the drink. So that's why I always ask that you guys make me one, so then I can try somebody else's recipes from around the world. So
Got you, man. Got you. I have to say that what you're saying is spot on. I think this year in particular, we're going to see that not just a resurgence of using simple ingredients and cocktails that are cost effective, but I think we're going to see a change, a really impactful change on the service that is rendered, because now we have to be more sensitive and more delicate. And it's going to bring us back to the roots of what hospitality is. Just like what you said, it's all about the interaction, the engagement, and making sure that you maintain and appreciate the trust that the guests give to you as the bartender.
Yeah, everything's in your hands, and the way and the reasons in which an effective bar that runs the way it's supposed to, it's all about that trust of, like, I'm here, everyone's there because this bartender gives either the best conversation or makes the best whatever, and that's why we're all here and gathered in front of this bar. So it's all of that's important. But I do think that we're going to see some changes in the way I think the snarkiness of some bartenders might be cut a little bit, just because we're all going to be a little oversensitive when we get back. Like, oh, you just yelled at me.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I had the worst mojito, which was the best mojito experience in Cuba. I was so excited. I'm walking up the street and I'm seeing the sign La Bogadita, which is the celebrated birthplace of the mojito. So I'm excited. Now it's debated, but it's, today it's the celebrated birthplace of the mojito, which is one of the most popular cocktails to date. So I'm walking in, there's a crowd of people trying to get in. And I actually enter. I'm hearing live, salsa music, and I'm just excited. So I'm looking for the entry to go into the bar, and I realized I'm already in the bar. The bar is just so small, and it's packed with people. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. I turn to the bar where they're serving the drinks, and the bartender looked old enough to be my granddad. And I'll tell you, man, because there's so many people coming in from the cruise ships, and they had a lot of tourists coming in. They were not doing fresh lime juice, nothing alimony. They were just pre-mix, and everything was, the quality of the ingredients was not the best. But I'll tell you, the service, impeccable. I mean, this is why it was the best mojito experience for me. He just rendered hospitality in a natural form and made me feel welcome, as even though the bar was literally 5 deep, for him. And I think that made me remember and made me appreciate, the roots of what we do as bartenders, that you have that opportunity to make that one guest feel. And I mean, I've been to so many bars around the world, and that experience really stood out.
Yeah, I think that's, I love that you said that, because that's one of my favorite things to do as a bartender, is to make people feel seen in my bar, which you have the power to do as a good bar. Like, even if your bar is packed, if you have this right energy and you know how to look at somebody the right way, you can make them feel seen in very little amount of time and make them feel comfortable and understand, like, okay, it's busy. It's going to come. There's like, I have faith now. you got to connect with them enough. So I'm like, oh, he knows I exist. But before you described you were already in the bar, it's like a dream of mine just to wake up and realize it was all a bar all along. Everything was already a bar. That sounds great. You were already in, man.
Yeah, that's it, man. And, the surprise was like, okay, all right. I'm looking at the walls because I'm in such amazement. And, and then I saw the guy in his all white apron and stuff. I'm like, okay. So, I think the ambience, because any person that walks into a bar, it's a new environment for them. And like you said, the bartender has an opportunity to just make you feel so welcome.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, and it's responsibility.
True.
Because, like you said, the bartenders are not only the ambassadors for all liquors that exist, period, the first stop, and the ones that will tell you, I hate this, or this is the best one, and they will do it with a straight face, and they don't care. Because we all have a lot of opinions, especially bartenders. We love them, but I don't know. I talked so long about whatever I was going on a digression that I forgot what my main point was. But I'll remember later and I'll come back to it. That's the beauty of doing this show. When you have your own show, you can just like.
Yeah, you do it, man. Listen to me, man. You flow, man. Listen to me. What I love when we drink and I do sessions like this, we call it the vibe. You just go with the vibe, man.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about rum also. I work with rum.
Yeah.
It's not whiskey. It's not wine. It's not cognac. It does not require you to feel pressure to know. I'm going to share with you. Yeah. I want you to feel, even if you think it's from pirates, and even if it was the only drink that you consumed while in university or in college, it's fine. There is prestige to it, but I just want you to feel relaxed. And I love when people like yourself are able to do that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's nice. So one thing I do want to know, I've also had, I've had a lot of different people on the show, but I've had the brand ambassador for Campari Group on during Negroni Week. And I got a chance to ask her a couple different things about what that was like. But I'd like to provide some information for people on here. Kind of that difference between being a brand ambassador, especially a global brand ambassador for a brand like Angostura versus being a bartender. And then what are some steps that we as a community can take that are wanting to move into that outside of the direct customer interaction part of bartending and onto that education or ambassadoring of a specific brand? How do we get there, and kind of highlight some of the differences between what your life was like before doing this and what it's like right now?
So to answer the first part of it, which is the transition, I will say that as a bartender, you already have that opportunity to step into a different forum of either, evolving and growing. But I think it's always important to look at your strengths. You see, some bartenders are very creative when it comes to mixology. And if that's your strength, then know it and harness it. And that's going to help you as a brand ambassador. when you're dealing with brands that require your innovation to really create certain simple serves or maybe avant-garde style cocktails with their brands. But you also have to develop some other skill sets to really ensure that you can deliver what's required as a brand ambassador. So you need the creativity, but you also need to have the ability to be able to speak in public. So public speaking skills are important. So you want to develop those skill sets. And it's a bit different from being in the bar. You see, different bars carry different atmospheres. So maybe at a craft bar, you may be a bit more, you may adhere to a bit more protocol, as opposed to a dive bar that may be a bit more wild, right? It depends on the styles of the bars. But when you're speaking to a forum of guests who are just seated, or you're doing a personal tasting, of course, you want to maintain the uniqueness of your personality, but there is going to be a level of professionalism that would be required. And this is where you kind of have to step away from just being a bartender and now see yourself as a public speaker. The third element is being a salesman or salesperson. You have to be able to sell the product. And you have to find the best manner that works with your style to sell the product. And it's the same way you would do when you're selling the cocktail on the menu. Someone comes to the bar, you show them the menu. It may be a brochure, a one flyer page, or an entire book as a menu. But when the guest goes through, one of the best experiences I always find is when the bartender can really make some personal suggestions and sell the cocktail personally. And that really kind of, reinforces and leaves a lasting impact. And your ability to sell is now translated into working with a product or brand, because now you're doing the same, but in a larger scale, where you're actually going into the niche of the brand and selling that to your guest. A fourth element would really be to kind of take all of those three elements there and see yourself not just as a bartender who's creative, not just as someone who has the knowledge of the timelines and the manufacturing, the production knowledge of the brand, and take those elements and see how you can use your personal style. See, everyone has their own style. If I put on a tiki shirt right now, I kind of fit the profile, and it's very easy for me to do that. But I've chosen to dress in this manner, and this is where I'm going with that. So don't think this is the only way it has to be done, that a brand ambassador just has to wear a suit and a tie to be able to be a successful brand ambassador. Use your style and your uniqueness within that. So I think those kind of, those four elements are really going to help you kind of shift from just being a creative bartender into the dynamic of growing as a brand ambassador.
I don't know if I would recommend everyone to wear a suit. Not everyone's going to look as fly as you do right now. It's like, it's not fair.
Cheers, big man. I appreciate it, man. Now, the second part that you mentioned to me, which was my personal experience, I have to say that there are so many elements of growth, and I think each moment is where I kind of have to push myself. You think that I've been doing this for a while now, and you think that, okay, you're not gonna feel the butterflies inside, and this is where I always love to challenge myself. So 2020 has been one of those years that really propelled things into a different forum, where now it's a lot more digital. So we have people like yourself, with these platforms, and I have to find a way to still be able to do what I do digitally, on a digital forum. Yeah. And it's not just being the creating the platform, but let's say as an invitation from you, I need to make sure that I give you the same experience as a brand ambassador. So when we're finished here, that I have you thinking a bit more about Angostura. Not that you didn't need any help. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. I'll make 2 old fashions when I'm done, and then a Negroni, and then I'll. So on that note, speaking about how we prepared and created these platforms for the pandemic, as of this recording, there's shots in arms all across the U.S., all across Europe, but it's still looking like, if you follow anything close to global supply chains and things like that I kind of nerd out on, you understand how truly far out this is. Yeah. Really, third quarter 2021
Mhm.
at the earliest that we could start thinking about doing some stuff. And here in the US, a lot of it kind of hinges on, I think, who gets elected to the Senate or not
Mhm.
in this next race. These are kind of some separate non-global things, although the global impact of America's government is obvious,
Yeah.
as we've seen the last 4 years. But what kind of plans do you have? How do you see us utilizing some of the new skill sets that we've learned, some of the new
Mhm.
platforms that have been introduced to ease back into a normal world
Mhm.
post COVID?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I can tell you that there's not going to be going back. There's going to be an evolution, and
Mhm.
we kind of have to prepare for that. Mentally, physically, you have to be able to adapt to it. So the digital forums that were created, we were all propelled into all of these digital platforms. I mean, if you say to anyone right now, my camera, my laptop isn't working, you're like a dinosaur. Like that's just
Yeah. Like, how are you talking to people?
exactly. So with that, we've seen the challenges that everyone has faced. So yes, so there is going to be reopenings. There are going to be reopenings, sorry, but it's not going to be the same. It's there. There are going to be a lot of. I don't think it's just going to be a switch back into what was. I think because
Yeah.
of the development of so many changes, I think we're going to have a merge of those changes with what we once used to do when we had the freedom to be able to go out to bars and go to to bar shows. But I think there's going to
Mhm.
be a merge of incorporating what has already been in place for the infrastructure for digital with these elements. So in addition to that, we don't know what the political status of things will be in terms of what rules and regulations or protocols will be in place. But I can't see it just going right back with a snap of a finger into what it once was, because there has been, uh, you know, uh, the vaccine has been out, and you feel a sense of safety. I don't think it's just going to go back. I think that is more of a fantasy, because what I see in front of me
Mhm.
is, there are going to be the type of attack that, or not attack, I should say, but the stringency of that was implemented to the hospitality industry was so severe, and it's still so severe. You mentioned in the U.S. and right now, as of yesterday, on today, the bars are going to close in the UK. For the past 3 months, the bars have been closed in France. We
Mhm.
have it happening all over. So to be honest, I think there's going to be the surviving bars and the surviving restaurants going to have to adapt to some of the changes that will come. And I think there may be some leniency to those who've already prepared some infrastructure to adapt. I think that may be something that will help them also. But for us, I think I think we just don't know as yet. We're hoping to see, because it's been one of those moments, or a year that feels like a moment, because it's like just yesterday we went into a
Yeah.
lockdown, and it feels like it's still happening.
Y- Yeah. Time has paused. This
Yeah,
is all just a part of the same moment,
exactly.
just the world's largest moment. Um, but yeah, it's hard to say. I spend a lot of my mental capacity considering what post-COVID world is going to be like, trying to
Yeah,
figure out the best
yeah.
way to position myself to take
Hmm.
advantage of
Hmm.
whatever is out there,
Yeah.
because I know, first of all, our industry is shut down
Hmm.
completely in the US for the most part, aside from some, a couple frat brother states that we got, like in
Hmm.
Florida and
Yeah.
some other ones like that. But the, it's going to be important to have an understanding of where you go with
Yeah.
this,
Yep.
because there's going to be so much time between when it's actually going to be, and there's so little help being issued
Hmm. Hmm.
for an entire
Hmm.
industry.
Hmm.
Um, which I will take a good opportunity to say we do have. If you're watching this on video, you can see behind me I have the unemployed
Hmm.
bartender shirts. We do have these available. I'm about to put out a new press release here later today. 100% of the profit from the sale of these shirts are donated to. You'll have a choice of a couple different options, and I'm looking in. That's why I haven't finalized it yet.
Hmm.
But we're going to donate either to a particular bartending support group or something that's
Yeah.
helping restaurants. We'll look into it, but well, there'll be a press release later today, but make sure you check it out. It's the Unemployed Bartender t-shirt. Just want to bring awareness. The whole concept of this is you see this shirt, you understand like, hey, look, there's unemployed bartenders all over this country and all over this world that did not ask to be unemployed. Have actually put a lot of time and work into their craft to be who they are. And it's been taken away from them through no fault of their own. And that's something that we all need to understand. Hospitality in particular, specifically and almost exclusively, has faced the brunt of the economic collapse that we've experienced. So anyway, just wanted to pop that in there. Unemployed bartender.
Listen, big man. Don't even pop, man. We need to shout it loud. I want to say thank you. All right, because I'm a bartender, and I think platforms like this is such a blessing. So, for those who are listening, I'm just endorsing it right now. Show some support. Even if you can't right now, share it. Share the message. Share what's available. This may not be supporting your neighborhood bartender, or it may be. You never know. All right. Again, it's a whole different industry, and we want to support each other. And I want to say thank you, Keith, for platforms like this. It's an honor for me to be here. And I'm going to do whatever I can on my end. But guys, share it, grab a t-shirt, even if I hope you have a medium size. I like to kind of show the guns a little bit. So.
Oh, yeah, I got one. Make sure I get your info. I'll send you one before we get off the show. But yeah, I appreciate that. And if you have any suggestions on ways in which the money could be most impactful, please let me know. I'm going to have a couple different options available for if you're unfamiliar, if you shop on our website at all, anything that you ever buy, you have the option to click a button that donates 20% of the sale to a number of charities helping a wide range of people. Currently, right now, it's Feeding America, the Senate run in Georgia to try to ensure that we have a progressive future, the ACLU Georgia, and a couple others. But I am looking for ideas on the best, most efficient way to get the profits from this shirt specifically directly to bartenders. So if you have any ideas or plans, people listening to this, there'll be a couple generic options available now, but definitely send those my way. Anyway, we'll get off the promotional side of things and let's make a drink.
Right, let's do it, man.
What do you got for me today?
All right, so I'm in the mood for something spirit forward. You mentioned old fashioned, and I was like, I'm going to go right back into classical fashion style. So I'm going to make something called the Gold Old Fashioned. All right, it's we're using rum. So yes, your classic old fashioned carries. You go for rye, you go for whiskey, bourbon, but rum is one of those spirits that really kind of, when you sip on rum, you listen. If ever, this is a rule of thumb that I always tell people: if you sip on rum, when people ask what is the best rum, if you sip on rum and it does not make you smile, it's not the rum you want. All right. So
if you're not a huge fan of super sweet stuff, though, I want you to give me a recommendation on if you like a really light, like a whiskey-esque, light sweet rum.
Yeah. So I think
separate. We'll do that at the end.
Of course.
I want if you have any ideas for me.
Yeah. So again, this is going to be a bit spirit forward, but you're going to have a little bit of the sweet, and that sweet element is not supposed to be sweet. It's just to balance the cocktail. The very definition of a cocktail defined by Professor Jerry Thomas was any drink that contains spirit, water, sugar, and bitters. So the old fashioned, being one of the oldest cocktails in the world, it really defines the traditional cocktail. And to this day, it's still one of the top trending cocktails. You can go to any bar in the world, man, and still get an old fashioned. What I love.
And they're on the menu, which is great.
So what I love about it, 3 ingredients, right? And of course, you have the Angostura aromatic bitters being one of those key ingredients. And it really highlights the quality of the base spirit, whether it be bourbon, rye, whiskey, your choice. So the Angostura 1919 is going to highlight this particular rum. And it's a gold rum, and I love the finish on it. It has that depth, that medium feel to it. It fills your mouth. You get those notes of maple, of honey, of cinnamon. I call it the creme brulee of rums. On the island, we love to drink 1919 and fresh coconut water. It has that highball, spirit-forward quality to it. So you're going to enjoy an old-fashioned with the 1919. Now, for the sweet element, again, the sugar is just to temper the bruteness, but also bind the ingredients of the bitters that accentuates it. So I'm going to use the Angostura aromatic bitters and the Angostura orange bitters in this particular one. So let me grab some ice, because I just want to make sure that my ice was not melting away while we were chatting. So
yeah, all good, man.
No, so this is, for me, I'll be honest with you, I love to make cocktails based on the mood. So another cocktail I would recommend also, if you want a bit more citrus, and if you're using the Angostura in 1919, now I'm suggesting 1919 because I know that in your market, you'll have access a lot easier for the 1919. All right. So for those who are watching, the 1919 makes an incredible daiquiri. So we're talking rum, sugar, lime, the holy trinity. But you're going to add 2 dashes of Angostura aromatic bitters. And I'm not just saying this because I get paid to say it. When you add the bitters, because it's an alkalizer designed as medicine, it really tempers acidity, like lime and lemon juice. So it's going to bring the freshness of the citrus, but it's going to temper that astringent feel of the acid. And it's going to make that daiquiri nice and smooth. And this is why the 1919 daiquiri, a great choice for that option. But if you want something a bit drier, and you're looking at, something a bit more on the bitter side of things, then there are 2 cocktails I want to say. One is the classic Trinidad Sour. You can't go wrong with the Trinidad Sour. It's an iconic new neo cocktail, which has a lot of bitters in it, but it still has a sweet and sour element. But if you want something on the drier side, I would suggest an Island Manhattan. And the Island Manhattan is really taking a bit more of the spirit-forward side of things still, where you have the Angostura 1824 and you use a sweet vermouth. Again, it's still kind of digestive, and 2 dashes of Angostura aromatic bitters. Now, if that still isn't dry enough for you, then my suggestion is drink the rum neat.
Now, I will say inherently our Manhattan is already technically an island Manhattan.
That's a good point, That's a good point.
But I'll let you have it.
I never thought about it from that perspective. I have to say that is pretty cool, man, when you think about it. So we have a nice measure of 2 ounces of the Angostura 1919. And again, I always tell people, it's the same thing for work. You love what you do, but put love into what you do. And that's my philosophy for what I do. So even when it comes to just making a cocktail, that's what you want to do. You want to give that good vibe, that good energy into it. Mm-hmm. So enjoy the beauty of using this particular rum. You're going to smell the aroma of it. It's gorgeous. When you're putting the dashes, you want to add 2 big boy dashes. Don't be afraid. Don't drip. Put it with confidence when you're dashing. And I'm going to add 1 dash of orange bitters just to kind of accentuate the orange notes. Now, what I love to do is take my time with the sugar. And of course, you can have your sugar made or you can purchase it, but I love to do a rich, simple syrup. And you want to go for just 10 mLs of this, which is the equivalent of a bar spoon. Mm-hmm. Now, to really kind of dive a bit more into the sugar can play a bigger role, where you can use a Demerara style of sugar, add some deeper notes into your old-fashioned. But for the sake of ease for anyone who wants to attempt this cocktail, you can just get a nice, rich, simple syrup, which is 2 parts of sugar to 1 part of water. I love to give it a dry stir, which is where the sugar binds everything together. Then I add the ice. Now, you want to make sure you use good quality ice. And good quality ice just means good quality water, because the ice contributes to 20% of the cocktail. Now, it's going to bring the chill factor, but you want to ensure that you spend such good money on your spirits. Make sure that you don't use wet, shitty ice, man. Get some good quality ice inside it.
Yep.
So you want to stir this for about 30 seconds, if so much, but it depends on the ice, of course. If the ice is melting quickly, you want to stop for a moment, taste, and if it's good, then you know. But if it needs a bit more stirring, then you can add some more dilution. Nice. So the texture of this cocktail is going to be nice and velvety. You're going to get a nice
Looks
kind of
very
velvet
viscous.
finish. Yes. Now we have two options. I love to always garnish. Garnish is a big part of it. It's how you dress. It's how you look. So we want a nice swat of orange and drop it inside. Now the alternative to this is to actually use the Angostura orange bitters in a mister, where you have it in a mister so you get some of that mist out there.
So if you don't have an orange, for the oils of the orange peel.
So this here, Keith, is a gold old-fashioned. It is gorgeous. It makes you feel like James Bond without a martini. And it's just one of those cocktails that I love. So I want to raise my glass to you.
I thought you were handing it to me.
Listen, take it here, buddy. Take it here, man.
There we go.
Cheers. So keep up the great work. I'm honored. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to share and contribute. And thank you so much to you and your team for what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So normally I have people, and this is your choice. After a bartender makes us a drink, I like to provide their Venmo or Cash App if people want to tip the bartender, or you have the opportunity of providing a charity or particular organization that's dear to your heart, and we can ask for that as well. Do you have an organization that you would like to have your tip donations donated in honor of? Or?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, man, what I would love to see is so if anyone wants to tip this great cocktail that I created and all of the passion that went into making it, any deserving tip that you would like to offer, I would love for it to go directly to the unemployed bartender, because I think you guys already have a good structure to decide where it can really support the bartenders out there. So if you want to, I would love for you guys to support. That would be my personal request as a tip. Get your t-shirts, send the donations, and make sure that you support. Now, also, one of the biggest ways we can support is take a moment to share, repost, share. Send it to your friends, just repost and share, and it costs nothing to do that. So if there's ever a tip that you guys want to do, even if it's not financial, make sure that you guys support the unemployed bartender. All right? Big man team.
I appreciate that, Bob. Appreciate it. Well, that was great. I really, really appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit more about Angostura and about the industry as a brand ambassador and making a golden old-fashioned for us. I'm not sure that I've seen every single one of those, so I'm going to give you my address as well if you just want to ship one of everything that you guys make at Angostura.
So I'll tell you what I'm going to do, right? Here. I'm gonna. So one of the things that we did this year, and we kind of celebrated that milestone, is we launched the Angostura, the new cocoa bitters. Have you tried it?
I have not.
Okay, so you're familiar with the orange?
I haven't
and the
been out and about much this year.
No worries, man. No worries. So, but you're familiar with the aromatic bitters, the iconic Angostura aromatic bitters. Do you know the orange?
Back shelf over here. Oh yeah.
You have the orange also?
I have some here, I think.
All right, no worries, Keith. I'm going to make sure that you get the orange also. But
sweet.
We launched, and this is new. So we have launched just in about 15 markets globally. So it's still happening. So it's not readily available in some markets and in some states. I think the only state that I think it is available in Walmart right now in the US. But the launches were not as grand due to the whole pandemic. So I'm going to send you a personal bottle all the way from France for you. Wow. And you're going to get this year the combination of the orange and the cocoa bitters, which are the only two flavored bitters on the Angostura portfolio. All right. So that's going to be my gift to you to just say happy holidays. Keep up the great work. All right.
What's funny is the only bitters that I had on my shelf right here.
Oh man, it's cool, man. I love bitters, and there's always going to be a conversation of who was really the first, because bitters was really designed as medicine. The monks in monasteries in China, Italy, and in France were making all of these elixirs using botanicals. And Angostura is one of the first that really pioneered into cocktails. Now you had brands like Peychaud's and Abbott's, and you had Boca's bitters, and even Jerry Thomas, he had his own signature style of bitters. But Angostura was available in 1824, making us one of the predecessors that took that elixir from medicine into a career of cocktails. So
it's funny because as I started out my bartending career, bitters was only medicine for me. That's how as a dive bartender, you're like, here's some bitters and lime, and we put a little bit
Yeah.
in the soda. You got a tummy ache, I'll take care of you. I got
Right.
anytime anyone had a problem, I had bitters for it.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
then once I got later into mixology, I was like, oh, there's other things, other
Yeah.
uses for that.
Yeah.
It's like, that works too, I guess.
Have you ever had a shot of Angostura bitters?
No.
Okay, so I'll tell you this, man. This is a big thing. We don't promote it. So this is a disclaimer right now. I would just like to say I'm sharing a bit more intimate details with Keith, but this is a disclaimer. At the House of Angostura, we do not promote consuming Angostura aromatic bitters as a shot. However, I will tell you, Keith, that my first experience, I grew up in Angostura bitters on the island. Every kitchen on the island has a bottle of Angostura bitters. You go to the supermarket, you get rice, sugar, milk, Angostura bitters. We mix it with ketchup when we're having French fries, or we put it on ice cream whenever we're having coconut ice cream or vanilla ice cream. So it's always part of our kitchen culture. And
that would be good with vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. I'm telling you, rum and raisin, vanilla, dulce de leche, you add a few dashes.
Yeah, you
like that. So as a bartender, you learn about classic cocktails, and there you meet Angostura and you learn more about Angostura. And for me as a bartender, I've been using it, in a few cocktails. But I always remember going to Chicago for the first time. And I walked into a bar, and I'm going down the stairway, and the bar is right in front of me. And as I approach the bar, the bartender has 2 bottles of Angostura bitters, aromatic bitters, pouring 10 shots of Angostura aromatic bitters. I walked up to him, I said, big man, whoever that is for, it is on me. Just pour a shot for me also, please. I had no idea what I was getting into. If it was some type of initiation, I don't know what it was, right?
Yeah.
But I had the shot of bitters, and every bar that I went to in Chicago, I had shots of Ango. There is a bar, an industry-based bar called Best Intentions. They have a neon sign on the outside that says Angostura on draft. They sell $4 shot of bitters. They use a draft machine cranking down chilled, undiluted shots of Angostura bitters.
All right. Best intentions, huh?
Yeah. So that was my experience in the US, and I felt like, oh my, that's a wild factor. Then I went to Malaysia, and in Malaysia, you can find a hashtag. It's called Malaysia Bartender's Handshake. The bartenders in Malaysia, they love to do, it's a bartender's thing, and this is a common thing. It's a bartender's thing where you take shots of Angostura bitters. Now, having a drop of it is different. It opens up, you taste a lot of depth, it's very bitter, but a shot is very different. Now, I'm not talking about a 15 ml. I'm talking about a big Jaeger tequila size 30 ml shot, all right, which is a 1 ounce shot. And the bartenders in Malaysia, they love to do it also. I remember doing a guest shift in Omakase and Appreciate at my first visit in Malaysia. And in only 2 hours, we finished 200 ml bottles of Angostura bitters. I stopped for a moment. I had a 3-hour guest shift. I stopped at 2 hours, and I'm like, guys, I need to take a photo here. I use this photo today in my master classes because it's unbelievable that you finish 200 ml bottles in the span of 2 hours. The bartenders, it's a cultural thing. You go to Peru, and in Peru, they meticulously put 3 dashes on top of their pisco sours, which they love, and they always love to showcase the pisco sour. So the appreciation of Angostura globally is something that I love to see. Man, I'm not advocating it as a shot, but I just want to say, big man, whenever I meet you, that's going to be something that we have on our between me and you.
100%. Yes. Look forward to it, bub. All right. Well, like I said, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show again.
My pleasure.
Want to invite everyone to make sure you follow, subscribe, download, whatever you're supposed to do with podcasts, do it to mine at the UB Podcast on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and theubpodcast.com. Daniyel Jones, is there any companies, hashtags, handles that you want to get out there that you want people to check out or anything before we get you out of here?
Oh, and you guys can follow me on Instagram, Daniyel Jones, or you can just Google Angostura and look for a guy with a mohawk like myself. That's going to be me. But most importantly, I just want to leave with a little bit of the mantra that I love to follow. And I mentioned it earlier. I know that, this year has not been the best of years for some people. So I just want to say, guys, continue doing what you're doing. Love what you do. And even if you're only getting 5% of it, make sure that you put love into everything that you do.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that you did that, because I was about to say, I close every show with, I hop on service bar, let you hop on point, and close out the show however you want. but you did it anyway. And that's the sign of a truly good bartender that knows exactly when to do what they're supposed to do. So I appreciate it so much. We will meet and we will hang out, and I look forward to that so much. I appreciate you on the show. Thank you so much again. I will see you guys at the bar. Oh, I like how that bell rang right at the end.